I know this, and I know this explanation triggers a lot of people, so go ahead and shoot.
How can you talk about rebirth?
You look very angry listening to this rebirth idea.
I mean, it's not scientific, there's no proof to it, and people just use this concept of rebirth in a way to sort of justify any kind of action they do, any social evil, justify some sort of inaction. Like it's become some sort of escapism, I feel.
Namaste. My name is Bidhan. 2012 is when I chanced upon Upanishads, and it had a profound impact on my life. Since then, I have dreamt to bring the key aspects of Upanishads in a manner which is simple, relatable, and implementable in our daily lives. So here we are with a set of videos to make spirituality simple. Welcome, Preeti.
Hi, Bidhan.
We are back to our series on karma. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for registering for our workshops. In fact, we are already doing the first one. All those who want to be the part of the second one, which we will possibly start in maybe a couple of months down the line, go ahead, put your details in the description below. All right, Preeti. So let's move ahead from where we left last time.
So before we move along, I think what I would like to do is sort of see if I have got the gist of what we already spoke about. So karma is, in fact, you said, and what I've understood is that it's not just a set of actions that create outcomes. It's rather an entire system, right? And in this system, we have outcomes that are both visible, which are immediate, which we can see, which you called as drishtaphalam.
Yes.
And we also have invisible outcomes, right? So these invisible outcomes are what sort of create mental impressions, which become our karmic footprint, right? And because of this karma and this karmic footprint, it influences our thoughts and actions. And these actions again create outcomes. So it's like a loop, right?
Absolutely. And this is what is said, that you can never run away from your karma. It is in form of very subtle memories within us. And it will keep us driving towards a particular outcome all the time, whether we know about it or not.
Right. So I also remember asking you this about, what about situations like where we are born, or what kind of family we are born into, or even things like death. Because you also mentioned that nothing is random, right?
Yes.
So how are these determined, and who exactly is determining all this?
All right. So let's break it. So we understood that karma has two outcomes. One is the direct outcome that you can see immediately. So there is no confusion around it. Now there is also something called an indirect outcome, which is adrishtaphala, right? So this adrishtaphala, or the unseen outcomes, are basically some kind of a potential which has been created, right? Yeah. If you remember, we spoke about someone who is breaking the signals.
Yes.
Ends up creating a mental impression, and that mental impression puts him into a situation which could be unfavorable at some point of time. Yeah. Isn't it? We discussed that. So if you see that a lot of actions that we are doing is creating a lot of mental impression, and that mental impression becomes my inner world.
Okay.
Right? So the adrishtaphala, the first level of adrishtaphala, is creation of my inner world, which I'm not even aware of. Now let's come to this second level of adrishtaphala. The life will actually put us into situations, circumstances, and people that resonates with my inner world, so that my inner world becomes obvious to me. I am able to notice it. I am able to understand it. I am able to work through it and transcend it. So a lot of our external situation is nothing but a resonance with our inner world.
Okay, the first part I sort of get, I understood, or I'm trying to understand the first part. But can you simplify the second part that you're talking about?
What is it that you want to simplify?
This thing of external and internal world. I didn't get what you're trying to say.
Okay, so we will try and make it simple.
Okay.
So inner world, you have understood that every action creates a mental impression, and that mental impression becomes a part of your inner world. That is something that you have understood. Now you want to know how is it external world resonating with my inner world?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take my own example. Suppose I carry a vasana of being highly competitive. That is my inner world. What will happen is that I will invariably find myself in the organizations, with the people, in the gathering, which basically fosters a lot of competition. Even if I leave my organization and join a new one, even if I leave my social circle and adopt to a new one, I will invariably find myself into organizations and social circles which are very, very competitive. To an extent that someday I will end up noticing that why I am finding myself into these situations again and again, what in me is so incomplete, is lacking, that is making me so competitive. And once you address that within yourself, understand it, do something about it and transcend it, you will never find yourself in that situation ever again. And this happened to me. I mean, I changed jobs, I changed social circles because I felt they are extremely competitive, but I never understood that competition was my vasana.
Okay.
And I was sort of finding myself getting into that place again and again. And the day I sort of worked on it, I never faced the situation ever again. And this is the beauty. This is the beauty, that your external situation is basically triggering your inner world so that you notice it and do something about it.
Wow. Okay. Somewhere it's like what my understanding of manifestation is, but I don't want to bring that up, because you're sort of saying that there are some sort of subconscious patterns which puts me in different sort of life situations in order for me to understand my inner world. Until I understand that, it's going to be putting me in the same situation over and over again.
Yes.
Wow. So basically my inner, my inner arrangements or my mental impressions, they have the ability to influence or change my external world?
Of course, yes.
Wow. Okay.
You change your inner arrangements, the outer world will rearrange itself to resonate with your inner world.
Wow. And I think to some extent, I personally also believe that, because like your personal experience, probably I've had my own. But this again brings me back to the same question of why are we born, or why do we get put into different situations? Because you said that these mental impressions come from some sort of outcome, right? But when I'm born, I'm not born with any sort of mental impressions. So then why am I put in those situations?
Are you really sure that you're not born with any mental impressions when you're born?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Okay, let's look at a slightly different perspective. Now, I'll have to explain you a specific concept. The concept here is that there is an agent within us which is doing all the karma through the body and mind. There is an agent of action. And let me call that agent of action as Jiva. I'm not using the word Atma because we all know that Atma does not do anything and it is beyond body and mind. And also, I don't want to use the word soul because I really don't understand what soul means. Multiple interpretations. So let us use the word Jiva as the agent of action, which is working through the body and mind. Is that okay for now to start with?
Okay, for the purpose of this conversation, let's just refer to it as Jiva. By mistake also, I don't want to say Jivatma and sort of trigger something there. But who is this? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Look, this Jiva is an entity, and let's talk about what is Jiva later. For now, there is an agent of action called Jiva, which is basically acting through the body and mind. Is it okay?
Yeah, okay.
All right. Now, when the Jiva acts through body and mind, it has an outcome. It has a direct outcome that can be seen and experienced by Jiva immediately, and the action also is creating an indirect outcome, which is called adrishtaphala.
We've spoken about
it. Now, since the jiva is the agent of action, all the adrishtaphala has to be experienced by jiva itself. And one lifetime is not sufficient to experience all the adrishtaphala. And therefore, as per law of karma, the jiva will be born in a specific body and life situations that will help it experience the unforeseen or adrishtaphalas which is due to the jiva. What's there to laugh about it?
You opened a very, very big can of worms, Vedant.
I know this, and I know this explanation triggers a lot of people, so go ahead and shoot.
I mean, just the fact that you mentioned what you were trying to say is rebirth.
Right.
Right. So how can you talk about rebirth? I mean, it's not scientific. There's no proof to it. And somewhere I feel that people just use this concept of rebirth in a way to sort of justify any kind of action they do, any social evil, or even justify some sort of inaction. Like it's become some sort of escapism, I feel.
You look very angry listening to this rebirth idea.
It's not anger. It's like I've heard so many people say this, and like, oh, I must have done something so bad in my previous life. That's why this is happening to me. Or you have done this. So in the next life, you're going to suffer. I mean, it just seems like it's escapism, and it seems like an excuse, I feel.
Okay. I sort of preempted this. And this is not the only one. I've heard this from so many people. So why don't we break this into two parts? The first part is that this idea of law of karma and jiva, whether it is unreasonable or unscientific, and two, the concept of rebirth, does it make us become a lot more fatalistic as escapist, or it enables us to take responsibility? So these are the two parts. The first one, whether it is unreasonable, unscientific, and two, how do we interpret this?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So why don't we just first concentrate on whether it is unreasonable or unscientific?
Let's do that.
The later one will come later. We'll see how the discussion goes. All right. For me, when I look at law of karma, it is about the cause and the effect. The effect which happens now and the effect that happens later. I find it very logical. What is illogical about it?
I mean, this cause and effect outcome because of an action, I understand, because it's logical.
Right.
But rebirth, when you say, I feel there's no scientific proof to say rebirth.
Okay, what do you mean by scientific?
Okay, let's see, just because you asked, maybe something that has evidence, right. Like some sort of measurable data, something that also has some sort of falsifiability there.
Yes.
There should be some kind of, where the theories can be proved.
Right.
Right? And most importantly, I think that all data should be objective. Like it should not be based on any kind of beliefs or biases.
A fair point.
I think that's what is scientific in my head.
Very beautifully you explained what scientific is all about. Now, if you're unable to observe or measure a data, does that event becomes unscientific, or it is beyond the scope of science?
I don't understand what you're trying to say. What is the meaning of that?
Okay, we'll simplify it.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we'll do a quick experiment. Close your eyes and imagine a red flower. Done? All right. Now, if I were to put an fMRI machine on your head, would they predict that you have actually seen a red flower in your head?
No, it'll just be some sort of electrical impulses, I think. I don't think that it can show the actual flower.
Right. So, because that experience of red flower that you had was a first person experience, private experience, which we call it qualia. And even if you put an fMRI machine on your head, it will show some electrical impulses. But as of now, it will not be in a position to predict that what you have seen.
Yes.
Now, if science is unable to predict what you have seen, does it make your imagination unscientific?
No. I mean, there are no machines to sort of capture that yet, I think.
Completely. So since there are no machine to capture what you have seen in your mind, it is better to say that it is beyond the scope of science as of now. And I have imagined a red flower, but it does not mean it is not there. Science cannot measure it right now. Similarly, when the body dies, the physical body disintegrates. But there is a presence of something called subtle body or sukshma sharira, which is loosely called as jiva, which basically continues its journey as per law of karma. And there is no way science can measure the sukshma sharira today. So is it fair to say that rebirth is outside the scope of science rather than saying that it is unscientific?
Okay, I kind of see where you're coming from there. Yeah.
Right? If you go to any scientist, they will clearly say the concept of rebirth is something that they cannot say it is there, and neither they can say it is not there, because it is outside the scope of science.
Okay. Yeah. So I completely get what you're saying about how it can be outside the scope of science. But when it comes to the red flower that we just spoke about, I have experienced it.
Right.
So I know that this is what I'm thinking of. And even when you say red flower, I probably think of red flower. But when you say rebirth, I've never experienced it. So then there's no way of it being in my scope of experience, right?
So you're saying that it is not in the scope of experience, then why should you believe in it in the first place? Do you know what a subconscious is?
Our subconscious?
Yes.
It's a part of the mind that is not in awareness currently.
Okay. Can you see your subconscious?
I mean, we can't, and that's why it's called a subconscious.
All right. So you can't see your subconscious, but somewhere we all know or believe that a lot of our mental patterns, thoughts and feelings are arising from subconscious. How are we confidently saying that? Because you can't experience it.
I mean, there is some sort of measurable data there, some kind of hypothesis, testable hypotheses are there to say, but I kind of get what you're saying, that there is a lot of subjectivity involved when it comes to even understanding what the subconscious is. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Have you heard of Dr. Ian Stevenson?
No.
So he was a Canadian psychiatrist who had no interest in spirituality or the ideas of rebirth. However, since he was a psychiatrist and he was dealing with a lot of patients, specifically children, he was very surprised to see that a lot of children of a specific age and below, they were able to recall minutest details of their previous lifetimes. And he was very curious that what exactly is happening. And he, being a scientist, he wanted to go in a very scientific way to understand if there is something like previous lifetimes exist. In fact, Stevenson employed strict criteria for evaluating cases. He interviewed children who claimed to have past life memories and their families. He corroborated their accounts by cross-referencing their statements with historical facts.
Okay.
In fact, Stevenson completely avoided any speculative or spiritual interpretations, emphasizing objective data collection and documentation, as you were talking about that scientific way of doing things. Yes, there are skeptics who criticize his work as unscientific and extremely biased, but there are many researchers who praised him for his meticulous documentation and refusal to sensitize any kind of findings. It was not based on one individual, one interpretation, one story, but a proper way the documentation was done. So if you are actually looking for, there has been work which has happened on these lines. Yes, I do understand that the size of data is not big enough to call it scientific, but there are accounts and verifiable accounts which somewhere points at rebirths.
So you're saying that there is actual scientific data being collected to show rebirth?
Yes, there has been work which has happened on these lines.
Okay, so I kind of see where you're coming from, not fully there yet.
Yes.
But I think what we're trying to say is that rebirth is basically, what do you say, out of the scope of science. So it's not, like I can't say it's scientific, unscientific. I can't do that.
You can't do that.
And it's also beyond the scope of my own personal experience, right? Just like we were mentioning about when we spoke about the subconscious mind. It's out of the realm of science. It's also out of the scope of my own experience. Okay, I get that. So, which means it builds to the fact that I have to take this entirely on faith. Is that right?
Wow. You are at it today and you're not leaving it. I like this discussion. Whether it is a faith, whether it is an hypothesis which is yet to be proven, or whether it is a simple logical understanding, why don't we pick this specific topic in our next episode? Because then we will analyze what you asked using 3 layers of understanding, which is Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. We are going to use these 3 to understand and analyze what you asked.
I've missed all these extra words that you keep coming up with. We've not had it for a few episodes, but yeah, I think I will look forward to that. At least from today's conversation, I think my biggest takeaway would be that there is this mysterious agent, this entity called Jiva, who sort of performs different actions which have outcomes that don't fructify just in this lifetime, but has to fructify throughout different lifetimes.
Yes.
Right? And then we also spoke about how our external world is influenced by our own inner arrangements, our own mental impressions. And we have the capability of changing our inner world, which changes the outside world. Is that right?
Absolutely. So a lot of time we concentrate a lot in terms of trying to change the external events or circumstances or people. Rather, if we start changing our inner world, the outer world will rearrange itself. And that's the beauty of law of karma. That's the beauty of law of karma. And I would like to ask my viewers that do you think that in your life, if you have made any changes within yourself and you have seen the outside changes automatically, please go ahead and put that in the comments below. If you have liked this episode, please like it, share it, and subscribe it. And those who are interested to be part of our workshops, please register yourself. The links are there in the description below.